I'm Alicia Miller. I lead the network API ecosystem development team at Verizon. I've been at Verizon for just about 9 years. In July will be my 9th year anniversary. And I've been working in this space for about 2 years. I've been working with Open Gateway, which is a GSMA initiative. I also sit on the board of CAMARA as treasurer. And I also lead Verizon's hyperscaler channel strategy for these network APIs. So I'm excited to talk to you guys today about why I think these network APIs are so important for telcos, why they're so important for the industry, and also how Verizon is leading in this space. So I'm gonna start with the big picture. Why do we care about this? According to McKinsey, this industry is gonna be between $100 and $300 billion by 2030. That is a huge amount of money, and whether that's a right number or a wrong number, we can know a couple of things. We can know that some of this will come directly from monetizing the APIs themselves, and we also know that a big portion of this is gonna come from additional connectivity revenue that these APIs drive within telcos. So as Arpit just mentioned, these APIs allow access to network data information, and that's really important, and that's why it's going to drive additional connectivity value. People are going to want to access the network more because it's going to provide more value to them. But what is actually driving all of this money? Where is this $100 to $300 billion coming from? What is the value to developers? So first, it reduces the friction to developers. And it reduces the friction because we're working on these interoperable network APIs. And that means that we're going to have the same specifications across every telco that adopts the CAMARA compliant API. And a developer can then put one line of code into their application and access that same network information across hundreds of telcos globally. That's going to drive scale for the developer. The second thing is that it increases usage and value to telcos, like I mentioned. So this data is valuable, and it hasn't been shown in this way before. Developers haven't been able to access this data in this way before through an API. This data has really been kept within the telco houses, and now we're allowing access to it, and of course we're going to monetize it. So it's going to increase the value of telco networks and increase the value of that connectivity. And then through all of this, developers are going to be able to create new features in their applications, new applications, improve the customer experience, and it's going to help developers. So this is really kind of a rising tide lifts all ships scenario. But there are a lot of challenges that we're facing. This is new ecosystem, and I'm sure many of you are aware that we did try to do this once before, but I think this time is going to be successful. But we do need to evolve on these 4 points for this to truly be successful. And the first is telco API availability. And what I mean by that is we need to have a similar set of APIs available across a critical mass of telcos, not only within a geography, but also across geographies. And that's what's going to unlock scale for developers, when they can access those end users, their own customers, across any geography that they want to operate in. That's where they're going to see that value, and that's where they're going to start adopting it. And the second leads me right into developer adoption. And we want to not only tell developers where they can go buy these APIs, this is a new kind of way of telcos talking and selling to developers, but we also want to tell them about what is the value that they're getting from these APIs. Again, this is newly accessible information for them. We want to help them understand what they can do with it. What is the power behind this? And that's where actually you guys in the open source community can help us do that. All of these APIs are open source. And so we can showcase the value by actually starting to incorporate these APIs and this functionality into existing projects. Thirdly is distribution channels, and this is where I spend most of my time. There's a lot within these distribution channels, but what we want to do is go where the developers are. So telcos need to be flexible in which APIs they distribute through which channels, and we're trying to figure out what developer personas are going to which channels. How do they want to buy? What is the value that they're looking for? Each channel is going to offer them something different. So an aggregator is going to aggregate all the APIs together across many telcos, and then add value-added services on top of that to provide a full solution to a developer. And that's going to be great for a certain set of developers who want a specific type of functionality. But for developers who want that extra flexibility and they want to incorporate that API how they want to in their application, they might buy through a hyperscaler marketplace where they can get maybe more of a raw API. and that they can integrate directly into their application how they want to do it. So that's one of the pieces that we're figuring out needs to be experimented. And then lastly, local regulations. And I think this is really maybe has been understated, but is hugely important. I think a lot of people in the room probably know about GDPR in Europe, but in the US, we're also incredibly heavily regulated. There's been some announcements lately. I think we've all maybe heard the FCC's net neutrality ruling that came out, and they have punted on some of that, and that's gonna affect what APIs we can expose, we can allow access to whom. Okay, that's great. How are we solving these challenges? So there are kind of several industry organizations working on this, but 3 that are really in the forefront. So first we have Open Gateway, which is a GSMA project. We've got CAMARA, which is part of the Linux Foundation, why we're here today, and then we've got the TM Forum. And I get a lot of questions about what is the difference between these organizations? What is Open Gateway doing versus CAMARA? TM Forum also develops APIs. Why is CAMARA developing APIs? And so the way I like to think about it is GSMA through Open Gateway is trying to solve the business problems of this, trying to reduce the friction for telcos to adopt the APIs, trying to make it easy for the ecosystem to work together by creating contract templates for telcos and aggregators to work together. CAMARA is actually developing the technical specifications for the APIs themselves. So it's like the tech work stream if you were to have multiple work streams in a project. And then TM Forum traditionally has created APIs that telcos use internal operations, not APIs that are really commercialized the way that CAMARA is creating these APIs. And so they're continuing to do that by working on what's called Operate APIs, or TMF 931, if you wanted to go look it up on the TMF website. And that's gonna help a telco system of all of our APIs talk to an aggregator system, talk to a hyperscaler system. I at Verizon wanna build one pipe and sell it many times. I don't wanna build a pipe for AWS, and then one for Microsoft, and then one for Vonage, and then one for another aggregator. I wanna build one pipe once, and that's what TM Forum is helping us to do. That paints a lot of picture with words, but what is the actual picture in our minds? This is a really simple view of what this ecosystem looks like. So you've got the 3 organizations on the bottom that I just spoke about, each with their own kind of functions. Right above that, you've got GSMA trying to facilitate that east-west connection, east-west federation, connection between and among telcos. And then the one layer on top of that, the northbound telco to developer, telco to aggregator, telco to hyperscaler. And then what are all these talking to? Most applications are really hosted in the cloud. So these are all mostly, not always, but mostly talking to cloud-based applications. What are the CAMARA API families? Why? What are we actually doing? We've talked a lot about what is the industry doing, but where does the rubber actually meet the road? So there's a lot of API families, and they're called families because there are several APIs that might be behind each one of these, and that will probably also grow and expand as this becomes more mature, but I'll call one out. My favorite, Edge Cloud. It's my favorite because we were the first to launch Wavelength. Edge Cloud has at least 2 APIs in it today, Simple Edge Discovery Service and MEC Exposure and Experience Management. And that's gonna be true for others like KYC, Know Your Customer, that's gonna have several APIs into it. But this is kind of the first set of APIs. These are being worked on today within CAMARA, and this is, and some of these are adopted in telco networks today. What do you do with these APIs? So on the top, you can see kind of API category, or use case categories and the APIs that will support those. And then on the bottom, you can see the actual use cases, and you can imagine the APIs that could be used to support these use cases. And I want to call out anti-fraud here because that's where the industry is headed right now. This is really what we're hearing from customers. This is where we're seeing the opportunity. We've heard about, in Brazil, the 3 telco operators there working together with the financial institutions on anti-fraud. I think we're seeing the same things in Europe and Spain, potentially Germany. This is where the aggregators are going as well, and the hyperscalers. So this is kind of where everyone's coalescing right now. The question is, what's next? What is Verizon's approach to these APIs? We want to go where the developers are. We want to enable our key channel partners to enable their customers. And we want to drive scale by leveraging the CAMARA compliant APIs, by making these interoperable. We've made some announcements this year. We announced with Vonage at MWC. We participated in Microsoft's announcement about their Azure Programmable Connectivity Platform. We also participated in an announcement with AWS. The announcements themselves aren't the exciting part. It's what we're doing behind them. These announcements are not vaporware. We are actively working with these partners, and we're actively working with other partners. So there's really more to come here, but the goal is to go where the developers are. We don't want to change their buying patterns. We're also working with other telcos to showcase the value of these APIs. So like I mentioned, we want to tell developers, here's how you can use these APIs. This is the value that you're going to get, and maybe you can think of other use cases that we can't even think of. So the first one is we worked with a company called Open Sesame. They have an ultra-fast audio pipeline. It's faster than pretty much everything else out there. And they also leverage MEC. And they use the Edge Discovery Service API to help enable their application. The Edge Discovery Service API that Verizon has, and that also is on Vodafone and Rogers networks, tells you the closest edge site to the end user. And that's not by geography. That's not as the bird flies. That's the closest network path to that wavelength zone. And so that really enables their application. It unlocks that real-time music collaboration use case. And we did something similar with a company called Matsuko, who has a holographic conference platform. And you can see an image here from our actual demo where we recorded a live holographic call over thousands of miles, transatlantic, leveraging 5G and leveraging this Edge Discovery Service API, as their application also runs on wavelength. So in both of these instances, we really are enabling these application providers to maximize the value of their application to their own customers. We're unlocking these use cases and using these APIs. And they are clamoring also for some additional APIs. Quality on demand would be one of those. And so we're seeing this demand, we're seeing the value of these, and we want to continue to talk about how developers are using these APIs. I hope that you are just as excited about all of this as I am. If you have questions about any of this, if you want to know what Verizon is doing, if you want to use these APIs early, maybe before they're available commercially, please send us an email. I personally check this email address. I would love to hear from you. Tell me what you're seeing and how you'd like to use these APIs. Thank you.